Your name is immortal, sweet. Your conversation is sweet. Your singing, your voice are sweet. Lord, is there anything which is devoid of sweetness in you? Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Friends, we are observing Sri Ramakrishna's birth anniversary service today. We did the puja last Sunday. And we are very happy that we have a guest speaker, Swami Sarvapriyananda, who is an assistant minister of the Vedanta Society of Southern California. He came to this, previously he visited us, but he has been transferred to Hollywood in last December. So anyhow, I invited him and he agreed to come. I am very happy. This weekend he was in Kansas City, and today he will speak here. His topic, living in the light of Sri Ramakrishna. Swami joined the Ramakrishna Order in 1994. He had his final vows in 2004. And he was a principal of Ramakrishna Mission Shiksha Mandir, that is a BT college, and then he was a professor of the Monks Training Institute. We call it our Belur Math, our Brahmachari Shiksha Mandir. So anyhow, he used to teach there. He taught the monks nearly 7-8 years. And he's a very good speaker and very, very popular among the young generation. Many of you have seen perhaps his talks in YouTube. He gave various talks in different IIT institutes in India. So I am very happy that our young brother has come to talk to you this morning. His topic, living in the light of Sri Ramakrishna.
Om Sarvadharmasthapakastvam Sarvadharmaswarupaka Acharyana Mahacharya Ramakrishna Te Namaha. Good morning. And though you may not think it so, it is actually a beautiful morning. I've just come from California, and I was just saying in Kansas City yesterday that so much greenery and wetness is a sight for sore eyes. It's very dry and barren out there in California, and crowded. It's so spacious here. Revered Swami Chaitananandaji, other revered monks, and dear friends, devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda Masharda. I was just thinking, what is it that really attracts us first to Sri Ramakrishna? It's exactly what attracted Swami Vivekananda to Sri Ramakrishna. This is a person who has seen God. This is a person who is immersed in God. A person who actually experiences God just about all the time. When we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, every day we find him going into ecstasy, having the vision of his beloved Divine Mother, in different moods, experiencing God in different ways, and always speaking about God. He says that religion is something to be realized. Sri Ramakrishna says that like the bee which sits on a flower, when it sits on a flower, it sort of hums to itself a little bit it buzzes a little bit. And Sri Ramakrishna says once it starts drinking the nectar, taking the nectar from the flower, then it quietens down. In the same way, when we first come to religion, we discuss so many things, we raise so many questions, we argue so much, we read so many books, but when one actually begins to experience the presence of God, then one becomes absolutely silent. One becomes immersed in that. Now, Sri Ramakrishna was not absolutely silent. In fact, whenever he was not in ecstasy, I think he talked incessantly throughout the day. People kept coming and he talked to them, he sang all the time. But all the subject, everything he talked about, he sang about, and everything had one purpose, one and only one purpose, that is God. He says in one place, he says to somebody that I am telling you the truth. On God's name I say, I know nothing but God. I know nothing but God. And this is what attracted, do we have a clock here? Yeah. Thank you. This is one thing I have to be careful about, the time. This is Jesuit priest from whom I learned communication when I was a student. And he used to say there's an art of beginning a talk and an art of ending a talk. And my students whom I used to teach back in India, they used to say, Swami, you have learned the first art. So I have to be careful about ending the talk in time. And Sri Ramakrishna, immersed in this experience of God, this is what attracted Swami Vivekananda. This is what attracted people to him all the time. Is it possible to actually experience God? Is it possible to see God? Swami Vivekananda comes and asks Sri Ramakrishna, have you seen God? And that was the first time he got a direct answer. Yes, I have. And so can you. That this possibility that we can experience the infinite, that power which has created this entire universe, created us and sustains us, that which radiates as our consciousness, that which is all good and all loving, actually we can experience it in life and all the time. That is the promise which attracts us. There are only two questions in spiritual life. Only two. One is, how do we realize God? That's one question. How do we find God? How do we realize God? And the other question is, how do we live in this life? Because even with whether we realize God or not, Brahman, Atman, Nirvana, Moksha, whatever you call it, this life is still there. This life is still there. People are still there. The family is there. The office is there. The body is there with its health problems and so on and so forth. The mortgage is still there. You still have to find a parking place for your car. So the world is still out there. Now, how does my realization of God, how does God help me to live in this world? How do I live in this world if I'm a spiritual seeker? So that's the second question. The first and most important question, of course, is to find God, to realize God. How do we do that? And the second question is, how do we live in this world as spiritual seekers? In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find M, the author of the Gospel, Master Mahashai. First meeting with Sri Ramakrishna, nothing much happened. He was attracted intensely. The second meeting with Sri Ramakrishna, we find he starts speaking to Sri Ramakrishna. First, he tries to argue with Sri Ramakrishna about something, and then Sri Ramakrishna scolds him very severely. If you read it, it's not really very severe. Master Mahashai says, my ego was crushed once and twice, and we realize how sensitive a mind Master Mahashai had. It's nothing very severe when we read about it, but he was a very sensitive person, a very intelligent person. So when he starts actually speaking to Sri Ramakrishna, a real dialogue starts. It starts with two questions. And look at the penetration, the profound thinking behind behind Master Mahashai's writing and his speech. Two questions he asks. First, two questions to Sri Ramakrishna. And what are the two questions? First question is, Sir, how do I keep my mind on God? How do I think of God all the time? That's related to the first question, how do you realize God? And the second question he asks is, how do I live in this world? There are two questions. There are only two questions in spiritual life. Even after we realize God or we have some kind of deep intuition about the existence of God, we have to deal with life. I was reading this book by a Buddhist writer, a philosopher and a Buddhist practitioner. So the name of the book is very evocative. The name of the book is After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. The name of the book. After the ecstasy, the laundry. So which means after spiritual realization, you still have this world to confront. So these are the two main questions in spiritual life. And these are the two essential answers, the central teachings of spiritual life we find in all the scriptures of the world, in all the great masters of the world. Thousands of years ago, when Sri Krishna was teaching Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, which Sri Krishna taught Arjuna, the essence of that is Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha. Contemplate me, God. Think of God, meditate upon God, pray to God, contemplate God. Mam Anusmara, remember God. And Yudhyacha, do your duty, fight the battle of life. Look at that. The answer to the two questions. What is the essence of spiritual life? Not one thing, not just think of God. Not the other, just do your duty in life. No. Think about God, remember God, do not forget God, and fight the battle of life. And the end is there, Yudhyacha. Centuries later, in the Middle East, when Lord Jesus was asked by his people there, among all the commandments, I used to think there were 10 commandments, but a rabbi recently assured me there are 613, I think. There are 613. Among all the commandments, which are the most important? Which is the most important? And the Lord says, like I imagine the people whipping out their notebooks and writing it down. Yes. And the Lord says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy mind. Great. And just when people are sort of snapping their notebooks shut, and he says, and there's one more, yes, and love thy neighbor. Just look at this. Answers to two questions. What do we do about God, about spiritual life, about God realization, and how do we live this life? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy might, and love thy neighbor. Not one or the other. Not just think about God and that's it. Not just be a nice guy, like people, be nice to people, that's it. No, both of them. Again, 2000 years later, when Swami Vivekananda, when he compressed Sri Ramakrishna's teachings and made it into a little motto for us to follow, for his followers, for the monastic order which he was setting up, he said, what should you do in life? Atmano mokshartham jagat hitaya cha. For your own liberation and for the welfare of the world. Look at that. Not just for your own liberation. Not just do good to the world. And the two essential questions. How do you find God? How do you keep your mind on God? One. The second one. How do you live in this world? Krishna. Ma manusmara yudhyacha. Never forget the Lord and fight the battle of life. Lord Jesus Christ, love the Lord thy God and love thy neighbor. Swami Vivekananda, Atmano mokshartham, for your own liberation, enlightenment, and for the welfare of the world. That is how you live life. When we ask Sri Ramakrishna, how do we do these two things? How do we think about God all the time? We keep our minds on God. How do we live in this life? How do you love God? And how do you love thy neighbor? How do you find enlightenment in life? And how do you do good to the world? Sri Ramakrishna answers this question beautifully. In fact, all his teachings can be seen as answers to these two questions. He says to anybody who asks him, he says to them, Vivek vairagya chhada dharma labh hai na. Without Viveka and vairagya, you cannot realize God. What is necessary for realizing God? See, he compresses the entire Vedanta into 2 or 3 sentences. Simple and straight. I met this mathematician, a monk, who is a great mathematician, a couple of years back. And I was trying to master symbolic logic. I was trying to read a textbook of symbolic logic. Just a fancy that I had. And because he's a good mathematician, I was talking to him about it. This book says this book says this, that. And that mathematician said, wait, too much talk. Give me the book. And he took the book and he opened when you open the book of or textbook, the first cover page, inside you might sometimes find a cheat sheet where all the formulae are given, just the formula, whatever is there in the rest of the book. And he read just that and he says, okay, I know what's in the book now. So just that much, 1 page of formulae is enough for him to understand what a 400-page book, what I find difficult after 400 pages of explanation. So he understands all that in less than a page. Sri Ramakrishna, just like that, he says, if you want spirituality in 1 or 2 words, come to me. If you want logic, if you want argumentation, if you want philosophy, go to Keshav. Keshav Chandra Sen was the great preacher of Brahmo Samaj, very well-known orator, philosopher, religious reformer, and an inspired speaker also. So he says, if you want argumentation, he loved Keshav. Sri Ramakrishna loved Keshav. He said, if you want argumentation and philosophy, go to him. But you want it in 1 sentence, you come to me. I'm reminded of a similar incident which happened in Deoghar, where I began my monastic life, an ashram of our order. It seems many, many years ago, Swami Shivananda, the 2nd president of our order, whom we call Mahapurush Maharaj, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, was visiting the ashram, and there was a great mystic who lived on a hill near the ashram. His name was Balananda Brahmachari, and Swami Shivananda went to see him. And that mystic had a disciple who was a pandit, a philosopher. And the pandit, when he was faced with this Swami Shivananda, he was sort of, fiercely loyal to his teacher. So he wanted to sort of show down Shivananda. And he started asking Swami Shivananda intricate questions about Vedanta, subtle philosophical points. And Swami Shivananda fumbled. He couldn't bring his mind down to sort out those little philosophical tangles, And Swami Omkarananda, who was a young monk at that time, who was with Swami Shivananda, he became irritated and he said to the Pandit, if you want Siddhanta, the final conclusion about spiritual life, go to him. If you want to argue, come to me. Immediately that Pandit's teacher, Balananda Brahmachari, said, what are you doing? It's Mahapurush. What are you doing? Keep quiet. He's an enlightened soul. Don't do that to him. So, Sri Ramakrishna compresses the entirety of Vedanta into a few sentences. He says what is necessary is Viveka and vairagya. What is Viveka? The analysis, the power to discriminate between the real and the unreal. And he puts it in 2 simple Bengali sentences. He says, in the world outside, here, what is real and what is unreal. What is Sat and what is Asat. Asat, Sad, Asat, Viveka. The ability to separate the two. And within yourself, know that you, the Atman, are not the body and mind. Outside in the world, what is real and what is unreal, you have to be aware of that. You have to realize that. Within yourself, within ourselves, we have to realize that we, the Atman, we are not the body and the mind. And he says that much. And what is vairagya? Turning a vishaya vitrishna, turning away from sense pleasures, turning away, a disgust, a lack of attraction for that. Now this is just very simple. And I was amazed to read this. 700 years ago, the great Vedantic philosopher, Vidyaranya Swami, who lived in what is now the state of Karnataka in South India, he wrote this little book. He was famous as the author of Panchadashi, but he also wrote this little book probably called Drigdrishya Viveka. And there he says, in beautiful Sanskrit, Antar Drigdrishyayor bhedam bahishcha brahma sargayo avrinoti apara shakti sa samsarasya karanam. Inside us, the difference between the witness consciousness and the witnessed body-mind, this difference is occluded, covered over, veiled by ignorance. And outside in this universe which we experience, the difference between Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss, Brahman, and the world of name and form, this difference is covered over by the power of ignorance. This power of ignorance, the veiling power, is the cause of all our problems, samsara. Now what does this mean? It means, first of all, we are the witness consciousness, existence consciousness, bliss, immortal consciousness, pure consciousness, as Shankaracharya sings, Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham. When are we that? After attaining samadhi, after after we go to Vaikuntha or Kailasha or to heaven? No, just now. It's there right now. Why do we not understand ourselves as that? Because he says it is hidden. What is hidden? Not the reality itself. The difference between our witness, the witness consciousness, and this body-mind which we experience all the time. We are experiencing them mixed up. We cannot separate them in our understanding, in our realization. They have to be separated. We are experiencing both. We are actually experiencing ourselves as existence, consciousness, bliss right now. But it's hidden. It's hidden. The difference between body, mind, and the witness consciousness is hidden within. And the difference between God and world is hidden outside. That's an amazing statement. What it means is, right now what we are experiencing is not just the world. Right now what we are experiencing is not just the world. We are experiencing God covered over by the world. We are experiencing God covered with the veil of the world. It's like if I say, here is a lectern. You say, all right, Swami? And here is wood. You say, okay, I understand. You're looking at the same thing. You're looking at the same thing. If I say, look at it as a lectern, you agree, yes, it's a lectern. If I say, look at it as wood, you agree, yes. We don't say touch lectern, we say touch wood. So, the material which appears with the name and form of a lectern is actually wood. The material which appears as waves in the Pacific Ocean in California, it's water. If I say, look at the waves and the surf, you say, okay. If I say, look at the water there, you say, okay, because you understand it's the water alone which appears as the waves and the surf. It is gold alone which appears as the necklace and the bangle and the earring and all our ornaments. Only thing is, in the case of the lectern and the wood, we understand what is wood, we understand what the lectern is. In the case of waves and water, we understand what is waves and foam and what is water. In the case of ornaments and gold, we understand what is gold and we understand what is ornaments. In the case of this world, if somebody says, this world is God, is Brahman, look at the world, yes, look at it as Brahman, we scratch our heads. Because we do not understand what is Brahman. We do not know the reality of this world. We know the reality of this lectern. It is wood. Why do I say the wood is the reality of the lectern? Because if you take the wood away from the lectern, how much of the lectern is left? Just a little bit. Nothing. It will just disappear. If you take the water away from the wave, how much of the wave is left? Nothing. Even the greatest tsunami wave goes to zero. Nothing immediately if you take the water away from it. If you take the gold away from the ornament, nothing of the ornament is left. So the reality of the ornament is gold. The reality of the waves and the foam and everything is water. The reality of this is wood. In the same way, there is something which we are not aware of. The reality of this world is God. Swami Vivekananda says, never approach anything in this world except as God. People, events, things, good and bad, approach them as essentially God. We do not see it. We do not understand this because it is veiled. The philosopher says, Brahma Sargayor. Brahman means existence, consciousness, bliss. Sarga means creation, the name and form. The difference between the two is being veiled. It's not that we see only the world and we have to search for a God. Do you see only a lectern? Do you not see the wood? Of course you see the wood. Do you see only a wave, not the water? Of course you see the water. In fact, you see water. So, this entire philosophy, Sri Ramakrishna says, you have to see in the world outside what is real and what is unreal. Within yourself, body and mind and pure consciousness, you have to see yourself as pure consciousness, not the body and mind. This is called, in one word he says, Viveka. Viveka. How do you do this? He's always evocative. The little examples he gives. He says the sand and sugar are mixed up. The ant can separate the two. Water and milk are mixed up. It seems that a swan is supposed to have the capacity. A swan, the bird, can actually filter milk out. I don't know if it really can, but the story goes like that. And the last one, of course, is impossible to translate into English. He says, I'll tell you in Bengali and try to translate into English. He says, Golmale mal ache, golti bad diye malti lao. Now what he means is, Golmal means chaos. And in chaos, there is substance. There is the reality. Something precious, worthwhile is there. Let the chaotic part go, the goal. And the mal means the substance. Take the reality from that. So it's mixed, which is presented to us. And we should be able to discern God in all this. How do you do that? How do we do that? And here Ramakrishna's brilliance really shines. You know, all the philosophy we talk about, Vedanta, and I've seen many cases, whatever we talk about, ultimately when people go away, I've seen amazingly enough, it's just one or two things which I quoted from Ramakrishna, that's what they remember. It's just the little examples Sri Ramakrishna gave, that's what they remember, and they remember that forever. It's like when we listen to the parables of Jesus. All the moral teachings we have got at school we have forgotten, but we remember the parables, the stories. Sri Ramakrishna says, how do you live in this world? That's the second question. Second question is, how do you live in this world where you have people to deal with, you have the events in our lives, bodies aging and diseased and death and loneliness and misery, success and failure, desires and frustration. How do you deal? How does spirituality help us in this world? How do you remain spiritual in the midst of all this? And Sri Ramakrishna says, he says, the boat can be in water. There's no problem. The boat is meant to be in water, but there should be no water in the boat. There should be no water in the boat. This body and mind gives us an existence in samsara. We are meant to be in samsara. But samsara should not be in us. I remember a very nice statement by a great political leader from this country. He says, I grew up in a slum, but I did not let the slum grow in me. I grew up in a slum, but I did not let the slum grow in me. In India, they say a lotus grows in mud. A lotus blooms in mud. So its origin is from the mud, but it's a beautiful flower. It's a beautiful flower. It grows and develops in the mud. In the same way, in samsara, God is to be found right here. Where will you find the wood if you throw away the lectern? Where will you find the water if you ignore the wave? Where will you find the gold if you throw away the ornaments? Somebody tells you gold is the reality. The ornament is not the reality. Now if somebody is foolish, he will throw away the ornaments and look for something called gold. You'll never find it. Swami Vivekananda says, he who runs away from life to meditate and die in a Himalayan cave has missed the way. He has missed the way. He who plunges headlong into life and in search of the vanities, the luxuries and foolishness of life, he too has missed the way. So if you run away from life, you have missed the way. If you plunge into life and do what everybody else is doing, you have still missed the way. Then what is the way? Either you run away or you plunge into it. So what is the way? And Swami Vivekananda says, the way is to deify life, is to find God in life. In everything, God in everything. The people you meet, the work that you do, the life that you are living, God is right there. Just like the wood in the lectern, just like the water in the wave, just like gold in the bangle. Sri Ramakrishna shows us how to keep our mind on the reality, on God in life. And the examples he uses are so precise and unforgettable. I can assure you, if you hear it now, you won't be able to forget it throughout your lives. He says, first of all, in the village, I have seen women who are working a pestle. You know, they husk and they use a pestle to pound the grain. They say chide. So there's this woman who's got a baby on her waist and is nursing the baby and is pushing the grain into the pestle, and it's coming down and going up. Again, she's pushing it in, and she's talking with one of the customers who buys the grain or whatever, and saying that you owe us so much money and you have paid us so much and so much is remaining. And she's doing all that, but they are not all equal. He says, look at his observation, Sri Ramakrishna. He says, almost her entire mind is on the pestle, because she knows if she misses that and the pestle falls on her hand, and that's it, she'll lose the hand. So the first and foremost thing she is aware of is the pestle coming up and down, hammering down and up. And she pushes the grain in and takes her hand out. Her mind is first there, then on the child, and then on the customer there who's going to buy the grain and all. In the same way, Sri Ramakrishna says, a true spiritual seeker will first secure his or her hold on God internally. Keep the mind, the best part of the mind, most of the mind, at the feet of the Lord. A very senior monk told me, I said, we have got so much work in the ashram, and how do I keep my mind on God? And he told me very poetically, not very practically, but poetically. He said, when you work, hold on to the feet of the Lord with one hand, with the other hand work. When your work is finished, hold on to the feet of the Lord with both hands. That's what Sri Ramakrishna wants to say. It can be done. If that woman is doing it for that work, can it not be done when we think about God in the midst of all our work? Then he says that he went on a pilgrimage once, Sri Ramakrishna, just the once. But he was extraordinarily observant. Whatever he would see, he would connect it to God all the time. Whatever. Once he went to the museum. Well, he didn't get very far, because whatever he saw, he connected it to God and went into an ecstasy. He saw a fossil, and he says that that's exactly how a person becomes spiritual. The little creature which died, it remained under a stone and got preserved. A fossil. And it becomes like a stone. It becomes preserved just like a stone. And he says the fossil becomes like a stone. In the same way, when you stay in holy company with people who love God or who live in God, slowly you become holy yourself. So that's the example he gets. So if he had seen all the exhibits in the museum, we would have had many more examples, I think. But he did not, unfortunately. Now, he had gone on a pilgrimage to North India, and he saw many things, among which he saw the women in the villages in North India. They will go to the village well, and they'll bring water, drinking water for the house, and they cannot make too many trips. So they have to make one trip. And what they do is, he says, I saw them with 4 or 5 pots of drinking water. And they'll put a big pot and a little smaller pot and a little smaller pot on their heads, and they'll balance it, and they walk back to their houses in a group, and they gossip with each other. They joke with each other, they talk about family matters with each other, but all the time, the mind, a good part of the mind is on that. Now imagine, he says, think about God, love God in that way. So you can do all the work, you're doing so much work, but At the same time, imagine the feeling that woman has when she is walking with those pots on her head. How alert she is about those pots. Exactly like that. Instead of the pots, let's keep God here. Sri Ramakrishna says this. And then he says, a little boy plays holding on to a pillar or a post, a wooden post, and he swings round and round and round. And he enjoys it. He's delighted. He bursts into peals of laughter. But he is very careful not to let go of the pole. Because if he lets go, he knows he'll be simply thrown, He'll go spinning out, he'll hurt himself. He'll break his hands and feet or whatever. So he's very careful about that. And Sri Ramakrishna says, how do you live in the world? Hold on to God. And then you can spin around. That means do whatever you want in the world. But hold on to God. And then enjoy this world. Sri Ramakrishna is a very interesting way. Most philosophers, the Vedanta, they regard this world as deceit, as illusion, something to be avoided. And then you realize God. Sri Ramakrishna uses a word, evocative word in Bengali, moja. He says, this world is not a fraud, it's a delight. When is it a delight? When you have gotten hold of God. When you have gotten hold of God and you look at this world, he says it's mojar kuti, a hut, a mansion of delight, this world. So the boy goes spinning round and round. I remember years ago I met this professor of religion from a university in Canada. She had come to India to give a talk. And then she's very interested. She's Jewish, interested in Buddhism, and teaches religion as a profession, and practices Thai kickboxing as a hobby. So very interesting character. And she said, I always, Swami, I wanted to become a nun. But I have a child. I'm married and I have a child and I have this career. I have to go on doing this. I cannot let go of the child. And then I don't know what happened. I told her about this story. The little boy playing, holding onto the pole and whirling round and round. And she was so delighted. It's a nice thing. It's a nice story that we like. But for her, it was a delight. Because she had a serious question. We are reading about it and we find it a nice idea. But when it's a burning question, I wanted to be a spiritual practitioner, a nun without any ties in the world. Now I am in the world. I cannot give up this tie. How do I live in this world? How can I get that? Can I not get God? Can I not have spiritual realization in my life? And the beautiful answer that Sri Ramakrishna gives, it was an answer to her questions. She later emailed me saying that I have used this story in my classes too. I tell my students this story. Then Sri Ramakrishna gives another example, which we can hold on to. He says, there is the balance of the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper keeps weights here and sells something here. A balance. And he says, have you noticed when you put too much of a weight here, the other side goes up? When you put too much of a weight here, this pan goes up. Exactly like that, he says, when we get too attracted to the world and immersed in worldliness, our mind goes away from God. If you put a weight there, when you are thinking about God, loving God, imagining the Leela of Bhagavan, of the Lord, the mind which was on the world, that lifts up. And he says, you keep this in your mind, the pan. And immediately we can understand. Right now, we can check all the time which side is heavy. If this side is heavy, definitely the pan is lifted, our mind has lifted up from God. It has gone away from God. You put weight on this side, immediately intensify spiritual practice, pray, listen to a devotional song, meditate. You will see this side coming down upon God, and the other side, you're lifted from the world. And that's a relief when you're uplifted from the world. It's a beautiful image, If you physically try to lift your mind from the world, if you try to struggle and be away from the world, transcend the world by ourselves. If we try to do that, it's an impossible task and it's unnatural. We are sucked back again and again into our worldly problems. Sri Ramakrishna says, don't do that. Put weight on this span of the balance. Automatically the mind will transcend the world. So it's like when we are driving, we keep our eyes on the speedometer and the oil. So in the same way, you keep the eyes on your inner eye. We keep our inner eye on the balance of the two pans. Moment we feel troubled, we feel uneasy, we see where are the pans? What is the balance? The Holy Mother says, puts it so touchingly, love the world, my child, you will suffer. Love God, you will get peace. The balance of the two. So, I'm learning how to drive. That's why that accounts for the driving example. They told me when I came to the ashram in California that you have to learn to drive. We can't keep driving you around all the time. So I'm learning how to drive, and I learned a lesson that when I'm driving, and I have got many teachers. So everybody who goes out comes with, and they sit with me and they'll give me advice. Once I had 3 teachers two in the back and one on the side. And they give lots of advice, all for my good. They tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and the sights around. And one day I nearly had a terrible accident. Nearly. You know what happened? I was listening to the teacher, and he was telling me, you keep your eyes on this mirror and watch what the traffic behind. Once in a while you must see that. And I was paying really good attention, and I forgot that the road was curving. And the car nearly ran into the dividing wall there, the barricades on the side of the road. The teacher was good, so he swung the wheel around just in time. And it taught me a lesson that when we are driving, every driver knows this, when you are at the wheel, your first and only concern, the primary concern, is not to hit anything. You can listen to people, you can enjoy the sights, you can watch the traffic, you can play with all the gadgets nowadays you have got on the car, you can listen to this audio, these learning tapes and educational tapes and radio, whatever you can do. You can do whatever. But any driver knows, first and foremost, you're not going to hit anything. You keep your eyes on the space around your vehicle. Where are we going? It's natural. You wouldn't have survived as drivers till now if you didn't know that. And that's exactly what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. That learn the art of driving through life, keeping your eyes on God, and then do everything else around. So that's what he's saying. And all the teachings ultimately come down to this. That keep your eyes on God and navigate through life. Now Sri Ramakrishna, the 2 questions, how do I realize God and how do we live this life? And the answers to the questions which we find on all the scriptures and the masters of the world. The question, is sometimes I feel I have this question that why 2 questions? Why 2 teachings? There must be something deeper than this. And Sri Ramakrishna has a core teaching which unifies these 2 questions, which unifies these 2 teachings, realizing God and living life. He calls it vigana, something beyond spiritual realization, vigana. What does he say? He says, when we enter a house, we go through the door, then we climb up the stairs, we leave the first floor behind and the second floor behind, and we go through the door on the roof, and we go to the roof, and then we realize, he says, you realize that what the roof is made of, the cement and the bricks, you look back and you see the rest of the house is also made of the same thing. Now that story makes sense when we read Vedanta. When you leave everything behind, the path of neti neti, not this, when we are searching for God. And he says, when we actually find God, and we look back upon what we left behind, we find it is all God. He says, finding God, realizing God, experiencing Brahman, experiencing yourself as existence, consciousness, bliss. That is jnana, knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna has very definite ideas about what counts for knowledge, not book reading. He says, you may read all the books in the world. There are these almanacs in India where the Pandits will predict how much rain, they would predict how much rain there's going to be this morning and all. And he says, you take the almanac and you squeeze it as much as you want. They may predict lots of rain throughout the day. If you squeeze the almanac, not a drop of water will come out of that. In the same way, no matter how much you read, it is still not knowledge. He says, knowledge of the one is knowledge. Knowledge of the many is ignorance. Eker gyan gyan, aneker gyan agyan. Knowledge of the one is knowledge. Knowledge of the many is ignorance. What he means by the one is the one reality, which appears as many. So Sri Ramakrishna has this doctrine of vigana. He says that it is the same thing which appears as the world. Because we are accustomed to seeing two, the subject and the object, God and the world, and that's how we see a spiritual life and a secular life. A life in the Vedanta society and a life when we get back into the highway and back to our office, our homes. Two lives. Swami Vivekananda said that the greatest teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, he talked about the one and the many. Sister Nivedita, in her introduction to Swami Vivekananda's complete works, she writes that all the teachings about the Upanishad and Gita and whatever Swami Vivekananda taught us, all those would be there if there was no Vivekananda also, or no Ramakrishna also. All those would still be there. But if there is one thing that is new, if there is one thing that is the distinguished, this is the most significant teaching of our Master, is his doctrine of the one and the many. He says, it is the same reality which appears as the many and as the one. The same reality which appears as this world and which appears as God. Swami Vivekananda says, the one only appears as nature, soul. There is only one reality appearing as the world outside and as God within, inside the world, within us. And Sister Nivedita says, what comes of this? What is the point of this? She says, henceforth, no division between the sacred and the secular. It's not that the sacred is secularized, it's the other way around. It's what we consider to be our secular life. Our life in the office, our life in the kitchen, on the driving on the road, teaching school, or whatever we do. All of that is as spiritual as our life in the temple or the church or in the meditation room. That is the doctrine of vigana, the doctrine that the one and the many are the same reality, seen by different spiritual aspirants at different levels of spiritual realization. It's a remarkable statement. Now you see, we begin to understand how do I think about God and how do I live this life? They are not two different questions. If God and this life are one and the same thing, they are at the most fundamental level the same question. The teaching, contemplate God and fight the battle of life, are not two different teachings. It's the same thing with regard to God and regard to life. Love the Lord thy God and love thy neighbor are not two teachings. It is the same thing. It's the Lord alone who appears as your neighbors. Atmano mokshartham jagat hitaya cha. Your own enlightenment and for the welfare of the world are not two teachings, are not two options joined by an and. It is the same thing. Within God, outside the world. Within being immersed in the bliss of God, outside having love and service to everybody. Swami Vivekananda says that let all dreams cease, or if you cannot, dream but truer dreams, which are eternal love and service free. So this is how we answer these two fundamental questions in spiritual life, which Sri Ramakrishna speaks about. The question of how do we keep our minds on God and how do we deal with this world. The beautiful doctrine of Vedanta. I remember this very funny incident which happened to me a couple of years back. I was flying through the northern Indian state of through UP, Uttar Pradesh, and there's a city called Lucknow. And in the airport at night, I was the only passenger. It's a small airport. I was the only passenger going through for that last flight. And they have security agents who check you, just like the TSA agents here. And I was the only customer there. So when I came forward, the policeman there, he said to me, Swami, tell us something. I said, here? He said, yes. And in India, if you go there, they'll have these little boxes on which you stand, and you have to stand like this and they'll frisk you. So I stood on the box, and he called all the policemen and the policewomen there, about 7 or 8 of them, and then I gave them a little talk on Vedanta. And what did I say? I said to the policeman, the gentleman, because he is from UP, Uttar Pradesh, I said to him, in the morning when you leave home, do you worship the Lord? And he says in Hindi, हाँ हनुमान जी को फूल चढ़ाते हैं निकलते हैं घर से. I put flowers at the feet of Lord Hanuman, because Hanuman is very popular in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. So I put flowers and incense, and then I leave home. Well, I said, the same Lord dwells in everybody. When these thousands of people throughout the day stream through in front of you, think that the Lord has come in the form of this man or that woman, and coming and standing in front of you, do your duty. Instead of putting a flower, do the duty which you are supposed to do, which God has put you to do. You do your checking firmly but politely and perfectly, and mentally put one more flower at the feet of Lord Hanuman. And he was so happy. He says in Hindi, he says that, Wah, din bhar Hanuman ji ka puja. Throughout the day it will be the worship of Lord Hanuman. I said, yes, you can do that. And he was delighted. I don't know what he did ultimately, but this is how we convert our life, the whole life, our workaday life, the work that we do in the hospital or school or college or business, and our spiritual life. We integrate, we find oneness in the doctrine of vigana, Sri Ramakrishna's doctrine of vigana. I have more or less run out of time. I shall conclude here with namaskars to all of you and pranams to revered Maharaj. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Friends, we have heard very inspiring, encouraging, entertaining, enlightening talk from Swami Sarvapriyananda. Masato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mritturma amritam gamaya, avirabirma yedhi, rudrajate dakshinamukam, tenamam pahi nityam, om shanti shanti shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality, light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto all.